What if one man conquered the known world before his 30th birthday? It sounds like something out of a blockbuster movie, but this is the real, legendary story of Alexander the Great. Stick around to hear how a young prince became the most dominant force the ancient world had ever seen. In the long and often brutal history of humanity, empires have risen and fallen, built on the strength of armies and the ambitions of their leaders. But among all the great names that echo through the corridors of time, Caesar, Genghis Khan, Napoleon, one stands apart, a king, a warrior, a legend whose shadow stretches across millennia. His name was Alexander the Great. His story isn't just about battles and conquests. It's about a vision that reshaped civilization itself. How did a boy from a small kingdom in northern Greece come to rule an empire that stretched from Europe to India? Let us dive into the epic tale of one of history's most brilliant and enigmatic figures. Our story begins in 356 BC, in the rugged kingdom of Macedonia. Here, a boy named Alexander was born into a world of power and politics. He was no ordinary child. He was the son of King Philip II, a formidable ruler and military genius who had transformed Macedonia from a backwater region into the dominant power of Greece. From his very first breath, Alexander was destined for greatness, but destiny needs a helping hand. King Philip made sure his son received the best education possible. And who better to teach the future king of the world than the greatest mind of the age? The famous philosopher Aristotle was brought to the Macedonian court to be Alexander's personal tutor. Imagine having Aristotle as your teacher. He didn't just teach Alexander about philosophy and science. He instilled in him a deep love for Greek culture, a burning curiosity about the world, and the strategic thinking that would later define his reign. While Aristotle was shaping his mind, Alexander was also mastering the art of war. He learned to ride, to fight, and to lead. One famous story tells of how, as a young boy, he tamed a wild and magnificent stallion named Bucephalus, a horse that no one else could control. This wasn't just a boy taming a horse, it was a sign of the extraordinary charisma and determination that would one day command the loyalty of thousands. The world of ancient politics was a dangerous one, and tragedy struck when Alexander was just 20 years old. His father, King Philip II, was assassinated, thrusting the young prince onto the throne. Many of Macedonia's rivals and rebellious Greek city-states saw this as their chance. They thought a 20-year-old boy would be weak, an easy target. They were about to learn a very hard lesson. Alexander didn't hesitate. He moved with lightning speed and ruthless efficiency. He marched south, crushing rebellions with such ferocity that the city of Thebes, which had dared to defy him, was razed to the ground as a warning to all others. Within a short time, Alexander had not only secured his father's throne, but had also united all of Greece under his command, something his father had dreamed of, but never fully achieved. With his kingdom secure and the Greeks in line, Alexander didn't rest. He looked east towards the colossal, sprawling Persian Empire, the traditional enemy of the Greeks and the greatest superpower of the day. His father had planned this invasion, and now Alexander was ready to finish the job. With an army of around 40,000 Macedonians and Greeks, Alexander launched one of the most audacious and ambitious military campaigns in all of human history. He crossed into Asia Minor, what is now modern-day Turkey, to face the might of the Persian Empire, a vast domain led by King Darius III. The odds were stacked against him. The Persian army was massive, drawing soldiers from across its immense territory. But Alexander had something Darius didn't: tactical genius and an army that was disciplined, loyal, and battle-hardened. The first major clash came at the Battle of the Granicus River. Alexander led the charge himself, plunging into the enemy lines. It was a risky, almost reckless move, but it inspired his men and shattered the Persian defense. This victory was just the beginning. Battle after battle, Alexander and his Macedonians proved unstoppable. At the Battle of Issus, despite being heavily outnumbered, Alexander's brilliant strategy led to a decisive victory, forcing Darius III to flee the battlefield in disgrace, leaving his own family behind. Alexander treated them with respect, a gesture that showed he wasn't just a brute, but a king with a sense of honor. From Asia Minor, his path of conquest led him south. He marched down the coast, liberating the Greek cities that had been under Persian rule. He laid siege to the defiant island city of Tyre, a fortress thought to be impregnable. For 7 months, Tyre held out, but Alexander's engineering ingenuity was as sharp as his military tactics. He ordered his men to build a massive causeway, a land bridge stretching across the sea to the island. It was an incredible feat of engineering and sheer willpower. Tyre fell. Next, he entered Egypt. The Egyptians, who had long resented Persian rule, welcomed him not as a conqueror, but as a liberator. They crowned him pharaoh and declared him a son of the gods. It was in Egypt that he founded the first and most famous of his many cities, Alexandria. This port city on the Mediterranean would become a legendary center of learning, culture, and commerce for centuries to come, a shining beacon of the new world Alexander was building. With Egypt secured, he turned his sights back to the heart of the Persian Empire. The final showdown with Darius III came at the Battle of Gaugamela. Once again, Alexander was outnumbered, but his superior tactics won the day. Darius fled again, only to be assassinated later by one of his own governors. Alexander, the 25-year-old king from Macedonia, was now the undisputed ruler of the Persian Empire, the king of Asia. His conquests continued as he pushed further east, into the vast, unknown territories of Central Asia, fighting fierce tribes in what is now Afghanistan and Uzbekistan. City after city fell, and in many of these new lands, he founded new cities, often naming them Alexandria in his own honor. Alexander's ambition seemed to have no limits. He wasn't content with just conquering Persia. He wanted to reach the very edge of the world. He led his army across the treacherous Hindu Kush mountains and into India. Here, he faced challenges unlike any he had ever encountered. He fought against powerful Indian kings, like King Paras, and faced war elephants for the first time, terrifying, tank-like beasts that panicked his horses and tested the courage of his men. At the Battle of the Hydaspes River, Alexander won yet another hard-fought victory against Paras. Impressed by his opponent's bravery, Alexander allowed Paras to continue ruling his kingdom as an ally. But Alexander's army had reached its breaking point. They had marched for thousands of miles, fought countless battles, and had been away from home for 8 long years. They were exhausted, homesick, and weary of constant war. When Alexander announced his intention to march even further east, to the Ganges River, his loyal soldiers, for the first time, refused. They had followed him to the end of the known world, and they would go no further. It was a bitter moment for Alexander. His dream of reaching the great outer ocean was shattered by the exhaustion of his own men. Reluctantly, he agreed to turn back. The journey home was just as perilous as the conquests. Part of his army sailed back along the coast, while Alexander led the rest through the brutal Jedrosian desert. It was a disastrous march. Thousands of his soldiers, along with their followers, perished from heat, thirst, and starvation. It was a stark reminder of the immense human cost of his ambition. Finally, in 323 BC, Alexander returned to the city of Babylon, the new capital of his vast empire. He began making plans for the future, new explorations, new conquests, and plans to merge Greek and Persian cultures into a new, unified civilization. But those plans would never be realized. At just 32 years old, after a night of heavy feasting and drinking, Alexander fell gravely ill with a fever. For 10 agonizing days, the world's most powerful man grew weaker and weaker. His soldiers, who loved him as a god, filed past his bed to see their dying commander one last time. When his generals asked him to whom he would leave his empire, his final whispered words were, "To the strongest." Alexander the Great, the man who had conquered the world, died in Babylon. The exact cause of his death remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Was it malaria, typhoid fever, or was he poisoned by his rivals? We will likely never know for sure. Alexander's death plunged his empire into chaos. He left no clear heir, and his final words, "To the strongest," were a recipe for civil war. His generals, known as the Diadochi, or the successors, immediately began fighting amongst themselves, tearing his vast empire apart in a struggle for power that lasted for decades. And yet, Alexander's legacy was secure. In just over a decade, he had forged the largest empire the Western world had ever seen. He never lost a single battle, a feat that cements his reputation as one of the greatest military commanders in history. But his impact went far beyond the battlefield. His conquests spread Greek language, culture, art, and ideas across 3 continents, from Greece to India. This blending of Greek and Eastern cultures created a vibrant new civilization we now call the Hellenistic world. The cities he founded, especially Alexandria in Egypt, became centers of innovation and knowledge that would influence the world for centuries. He was a visionary who dreamed of a world united by a common culture. From a young king, who many underestimated, to the greatest conqueror in history, Alexander's life was a testament to what one person with unwavering determination can achieve. His story reminds us that legends are not just born. They are made through courage, ambition, and an unbreakable will to shape the world. If you enjoy legendary history stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It really helps us bring more of these epic tales to you. And let us know in the comments, which great conqueror or historical figure should we cover next? Thanks for watching. More epic stories are on their way, because legends never die.